Hello and welcome to Crane Talk, a podcast that covers all things cranes, rigging, and heavy iron. My name is Isaac Smith and I'm joined by two experts in the industry, Ron Thompson and Gene Greiner. Gentlemen, it feels kind of weird not to have a guest today.
Well, we invited a couple of people from Trump's party, but they declined to. No, I'm just kidding. No, we want that guy that was part of the Signal conference. They inadvertently invited this journalist from the Atlantic.
Oh, yeah. I heard about that story.
On the bombing of Houthis in Yemen. And of all people, they had this guy listening to just high-level war planning on bombing the Houthis in Yemen. We tried to get him, but he's booked up too. So,
oh man,
just be us.
I mean, with a scoop like that, no wonder he's probably all the podcasts are asking him right now.
Well, when you have 19 of the top military people, including the president, in this conference, very sensitive data conference call, sensitive. And for somebody inadvertently to type in his name, why do you have his name in your contact directory? I'm thinking, this guy has been something else, even in Trump's first term, was not a big fan. So won't get political here, but that's what's going on.
He couldn't make it.
It's crazy. Texas meets every 2 years in their legislature. It's January to, I think, May 1st they meet. And I think this year, Gene, there's close to 8,000 bills that the House and Senate will actually look at and review. Usually, Governor Abbott signs about 20% into law. So you're looking at maybe 1,000 bills that will be signed into law. I don't know about the 1,000 bills, but I can talk about some of the construction bills. They're up for debate. For passage. And
they definitely have their goals. And what's interesting is I think they assign the bill number as kind of a ranking. So if it's House Bill 10, it's the 10th most important issue to the leadership for that session. So I know they're focusing on property tax relief, infrastructure, things of that nature. But, like what Ron said, there's some important construction legislation that's being considered and deliberated this spring as well, at least here in our home state. So, yeah.
So the current makeup in the Texas Senate, there's 20 Republicans and 11 Democrats. Okay. In the House, it's 88 Republicans and 62 Democrats. It takes, Gina, 60% to get bills passed through both Senate and Republican House, or the House.
Yeah.
So the Republican has the majority. And when I say Republican, they seem to be more business-friendly, passing bills that would help a small business, medium business, and they promote growth in Texas. In the House, it's an 88-62 advantage, so they're a little short. So if every Republican voted for a bill that would benefit, I'll just say the construction industry in Texas, they would have to get 3 or 4 Democrats to cross over to support that. There are some conservative Democrats, and most of them are out of South Texas. There is also a new Speaker of the House. Dade Phelan fell out of favor with Dan Patrick. So I think Dustin Burrows is the new Speaker of the House, and he seems to be more conservative than what Phelan was. So, a little bit of changing there. And these legislatures, they get rich off serving. They get $600 a month. Plus per diems. And so it's a volunteer gig. It's not something you can make money on. But they do it because they love the state of Texas. That's where we are. This is the 89th Texas legislature session. Like I said, it meets every 2 years. So we're right in the middle of this session as we talk. First week in January until about May 1st. And then they present all these bills, and ones that do pass both House and Senate to Governor Abbott. And then he has 30 days to sign, and some will be contested. So in that 30-day time period between May 1st and June 1st, there'll be some back and forth on some of this bill. Now, when a bill is passed, the majority go into effect September 1st.
Okay.
So that's when we can see the results of what's happening in this legislature. A couple of bills that it would affect the construction industry. Like I said, these bills are being debated right now, up for review. There's one, a Senate Bill 1530, Juan Hinojosa, and it amends the property code to increase objectivity and certainty around the timeline for release of retainage. Now, in common man terms, that means you can't hold retainage on a job forever. You got time limits. You take out any subjective language to withhold retainage, keep retainage, and to release it back to the proper parties. And another one here is we see it all the time in contracts where the governing part, either developer or the GC, can withhold money if certain things were not done. And including if you have another contract where there was an issue that they're withholding money, they're saying you cannot withhold money on other contracts to this contract that we're working on right now. And so we commonly see we'll withhold money if there is a claim or damages on the project. And we try to educate our clients to change that language to say, if the claim or damages has been submitted to the subcontractor's insurance carrier, you can't withhold money. It's a complete separate, different issue. And so it looks like that's being tightened up too.
You know, if you got a GC that has project A with owner A, project B with owner B, right? Like the correlation between the two, it's just a way for the GC to hang on to cash. You know, they may be completely different owners, completely different prime contracts, completely different everything. But what they'll say is, hey, if you're on project A and we've got a claim going on project B, then we're going to hold paying you on project A until project B is cleared up. It's ridiculous. So,
is there any other industry that operates like that when they're doing business? Like in the, I know I'm in the production world, but in that world, when you're working with contractors, you don't get to pull stunts like that. You don't get to hold the rest of the team up because of one problem.
I bet it's in a lot of different things. I can speak to construction, but you know,
I can also do that. 10 years ago, we had contracts, but not on every job. Now it seems like every job we get a 40 to 50 or 60 page contract. And they're usually written by the general contractor or the developer or the owner, and not by the subcontractor. So we have to go in and try to balance that language out some. And we're not rendering legal advice. We're here as risk control, risk advisors to our clientele and offer them more of a balanced language in there. And so, for example, the withholding funds, if there's damages or a claim, well, what if one of our crane clients goes out and damages a piece of the parking lot that can be repaired, 5 feet damage to the parking lot can be repaired pretty quick, and they're withholding $500,000 on the contract. That's where it gets really goofy.
Okay, I understand.
Yeah. So that has happened. And the other one here is when we read these contracts about venues, whoever wrote the contract says that the mediation or suit to be filed will be governed by the state of Virginia or the state of California or the state of New Hampshire. It's wherever the GC is home based. And so we have to amend that language to say the venue of mediation or a lawsuit will be governed by the location of the job site where the accident took place. Now, that's one of the bills that's being presented. You cannot use an out-of-state venue to govern Texas laws because we want it in a Texas courtroom, preferably not a big Dallas, San Antonio, or Houston courtroom, but that's up for passage also. And one of our favorites, Gene, is incorporation by reference. That's a bill that's being presented right now. So the incorporation by reference, you'll see in a contract where the GC or developer has signed a prime contract with the owner of the project, or the GC has signed off a contract with the developer. And it says, subcontractor, you will be bound by the terms of the prime contract that we signed off on. And the problem is we never get the prime contract to review. And it's called incorporation by reference. It's in every contract we see. It's Tan Parker's bill, Senate Bill 1040. So that is up where you cannot use the incorporation by reference language unless you review the prime contract. And I bet they're going to say within a time period of 10 days. And we've asked for prime contracts many, many times, and I've received one. They don't send you a prime contract review, but they want you to be bound by the terms of that prime contract.
So conversely, going upstream, a lot of our clientele, crane and rigging rental clientele have, their rental agreements that they have their customers sign. And there could be language in those agreements that incorporate documents by reference. So do you know anything? Is this just for like a prime contract, or do you know if this is?
Well, right now they passed it for private work, and we want to, or public, one or the other, trying to pass it for all public and private projects. And right now they did get it passed for maybe a public project.
Public.
Yeah, and most of the work is done privately. So they're trying to say, yeah, we got it done in 21 for public, but we want it all across the board. And so I think that would be a huge one to watch to see if it does get passed. So we're not bound by the terms of the prime contract that we never saw. And then they'll probably say you will be bound, but they have 10 days to get it to you. And if you don't have that time period, it's null and void.
Well, most of the time on an incorporation by reference, it lists like a place where you can go get it, like a website, a URL, some sort of place where the documents are housed, where you can just go at your leisure and type in whatever, www.contractsyou'retalkingabout.com, and pull it up and read them. But, in this case, they're just nowhere to be found. They incorporate them into the contract, but you're not actually able to go read it. You have to request it, and they don't give it to you. Yeah.
That's right. Some of the things that are on Dan Patrick's list, on Governor Abbott's list, Dan Patrick's the Attorney General here, is property tax relief. And we're kind of getting a little bit sidebar here, but they passed a huge bill in 21 to increase the homestead exemption from $40,000 to $100,000. Wow. Now they're going to say we're going to increase it to $140,000 because of the escalation of housing cost. So that's a huge deal. It's a political move. I mean, it gets votes saying I want to pay less taxes. That's up. The water infrastructure is another big deal with them right now.
ERCOT.
Yes. ERCOT, the energy, which we had a huge meltdown in February of 21.
Yes, we did.
Huge meltdown. And ERCOT caught all sorts of grief, and so did the politicians. You got to fix it. And so that is also one of the goals. And the biggest goal, and I don't know anything about it, is the voucher system for public schools, raising money to give each student availability of money to attend any school they want to.
Okay. Is that school of choice?
School of choice.
Okay.
School of choice. And that's huge. And then there's this little thing dangling out there they're going to talk about. And they're going to talk about how do we curb these nuclear verdicts? So we have
The podcast listeners have never heard that before.
No, the underlying theme of Crane Talk.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there was a walk on the Capitol done 2 weeks ago where small business owners, ours would be construction, that went to the Capitol and spoke to the legislatures about the issues they're having with the soaring insurance costs and how it's affecting their business. And it was good. They have a walk in the House, every 2 years, when they're in session, the walk on the Capitol, which was really, really good. And, when these legislatures hear this, companies don't want to come to Texas. It's the biggest growth state in the nation. But when they hear about the legal environment and the cost of doing business and the soaring insurance rates, it takes away from a company's ability to do additional training, to upgrade their equipment, to keep salaries competitive. And the plaintiff lawyers want you to think that they're helping society by keeping these bad truckers off the road. And therefore, we want the $50 million. And in essence, it's doing the opposite. It's taking great resource away from these companies, these businesses, that they could be allocating to upgrade safety, do more training, hire better people, and keep competitive raises going. And it's very difficult when you go out for renewal and there's, a big lawsuit settlement on their loss history. And it's affecting these small businesses.
Well, I've got one going right now. They're a company here in North Texas. They have 4 locations. They've got heavy trucks, and they've been clean. If you take, the last 5 years of what they've paid in insurance premium and you add it up, and then you take the amount of claim dollars that the carrier has paid out over the last 5 years, and you compare the two, they are roughly 20% claims to premium. So that's pretty healthy in my opinion, right?
Okay.
So it's a 80 cents on the dollar the insurance carrier is keeping, right, to pay for its own expenses and everything else. So that's healthy. That's a really good number. They have 3 small claims right now, and all they're not a crazy huge injury, just small stuff, little day-to-day type fender bender type stuff. All 3 are represented by plaintiff counsel, right? And this carrier has chosen to increase the rates on this account to a very large degree, because they don't know where those 3 small little fender benders go. Like, what are you talking about? The experience is there. 5 years. The carrier's made a lot of money on this, yet you have 3 small claims now, and the feeling is, well, there is no backstop anymore. Like, we could spend $50,000 on that claim, or we could spend $500,000 on that claim, even though it's that insignificant. There's no backstop, and that's. You take that level of detail out to a customer, and they want to fire shots at you. They're like, this doesn't make any sense. So that's why we talk about this so much, is because there's no backstop. There's that feeling of, well, this could go for a really large amount. One of the things in the prior podcast with Lee Parsley was capping non-economic damages, right? And based on what you were saying earlier about how kind of slim the margins are with the House and the Senate, you'd have to have some people flip. So it's kind of it's a harder path to get that done in Texas right now. I don't know. Maybe they're successful in lobbying them and whipping the House to hopefully get the votes. Because as Lee said, that's the silver bullet, is once you get that backstop, a lot of this stuff, you see some relief. So, what are some of the things that they're pushing for right now? We've talked about a lot of it, but I like the idea of changing the narrative on. So let's say they can't get a cap on non-economic damages. Florida did it. Iowa did it. I think there's like 8 or 9 states that have done it thus far. Obviously, Texas is not one of them yet. But there's a narrative out there that non-economic damages are somehow like a punishment for the employer, the company, the owner of the truck, right? Or the owner of the crane. They view this as some sort of punishment where they're tagging these guys. But in reality, the non-economic damages are for the plaintiff. It's not against the company that owns the truck. And so we've gotten this conflated or reversed, if you will. And so bringing that back into focus and somehow creating statute to where that's communicated or that has to be shown in court or in proceedings, like, maybe that helps. I mean, obviously the cap is where we want to end up, like those other 8 or 9 states. But in the interim, it's overwhelming. Like, you see it on the billboards, you see it on the commercials, like, punish those guys. Sure. Like, it's ridiculous. Kind of a tangent there, but that's definitely something that I'm seeing that I would hope they address, either like formally or they create a pathway where we can talk through this.
You get a claim in and there's some bumper damage, probably get it repaired for under $1,000. The lawyers have case runners, which they get police reports. It's public record. And these case runners will call the individuals. You can find anybody's name on the internet these days. They've got a copy of the police report, and they'll say, hey, we're a accident victim advocacy group. And we can refer you to a lawyer or medical doctors. Just let us know. And I personally witnessed this. So the case runners, that has to be outlawed. It's not legal, but it's happening every day. And that's how lawyers get a lot of their clients. And it's usually 7 days after the accident, but that's when the police report's published. So we get a lawyer representation. It's a bumper damage. We get subpoenaed for all their insurance policies. And after the subpoena, we send over the policies. A week after that, it's the policy limit demands. So if it's a big umbrella, they sue for the entire umbrella policy. And that's what's happening. And plaintiff lawyers want to portray our clients, heavier construction clients, as a threat to society. They are mean, bad people trying to kill people. And it puts that fear, and that triggers the jury to say, we're going to award huge non-economic, which is mental anguish and pain and suffering, very subjective viewpoint. Economic, you validate, pretty much objective. Non-economic is subjective.
Mm-hmm. Well, like, if they truly want to punish construction companies, then go after punitive damages, not non-economic damages. But the boundaries are blurry. They're allowed to do it. And the judges are allowing it too. So, why couldn't we force judges to substantiate these massive judgments? Like, it's ridiculous, right? And so, couldn't that be a place we go? It's too easy for them to milk all the money out of the system, to what good is it happening? So,
well, it's one of the things that's going to be brought up in the legislature on nuclear verdict as require these judges to justify their excessive awards.
Mm-hmm.
If an attorney makes a motion to reduce the size of non-economic damages, a trial judge should have to provide a legal and factual basis for the excessive award. And that's one of the topics they're going to be discussing, to have more accountability from judges. Because when House Bill 19 was passed in 2021, and even you going back to 2012, Gene, with the anti-indemnity statute, great bills, just not working. And it because of the flexibility of the trial judges to make their own decisions, and maybe ignore some of the statute and ignore some of the indemnification statutes that was passed by Rick Perry in 2012. So you got to have good statute and good judges.
And you hear that too. Like, so why didn't you guys apply the bifurcated trial system through House Bill 19 from back in 2021? Well, because the judge threw it out. It's like, well, how can he do that? He or she, how can the judge do that? You know, and it's a head scratcher, right? I'm not entirely sure why they do that. I'm not in the courtroom, but you know, that's got to be strengthened. There has to be buy-in from the legislature. You know, the judges themselves. So like I'm 100% on board on that. If they can't get a cap on this, then they have to basically build a framework that creates accountability for all of this, because it is unsustainable. It's not something we can just premium our way out of. It's not real. So
Carriers, insurance companies are now mandating, not optional, to implement video into any truck, tractor, or mobile crane over the road. Where rubber meets the road, they want video, which would be a dash camera. It could be forward facing. It'd be facing back to the driver, which the drivers don't like, but you know, and you have side cameras. And so another problem that Senate Bill 19 wasn't aware of is judges weren't allowing video for defense mechanisms.
Right.
They're going, we're not allowing video. We got clear video that shows that we were not at fault. And judges were tossing the video out, not allowing it as evidence. So you spend all this money, cameraing it up, and then be told you can't use it. So that's another thing that has to be addressed. The plaintiff lawyers, when they get somebody as a client from a case runner, they'll say, we've got our team of doctors we want you to be treated by. And they're hired by plaintiff lawyers. So, if it gets down to the courtroom, they bring in their doctors that will testify that you can get brain tissue damage from a 5-mile-an-hour bump. And we've had that. So one of the laws to be addressed is you have to disclose, plaintiff lawyer, your relationship with the treating physician. And that would be huge.
Isn't there? I've heard that there's some of the larger plaintiff law firms actually have ownership stakes in the medical facilities that are providing the medical costs, for use in the case of how much money has been spent and what they need to go for. So it's just a massive conflict of interest. So disclosing that is, I think, extremely important. And I don't know. I understand why, the plaintiff counsel lobby wouldn't want that, to be disclosed. But, for the purposes of doing business in Texas, it's got to be. It's got to be. The medical costs need to be real and accurate, right? Like, we're not saying we don't want to pay medical expenses if there's negligence on the part of on the part of the employer, the company. But to trump it up and inflate it and just make it so out of sight, it doesn't even make sense. It's not conducive to truth, and it's not conducive to a healthy business environment where we can do what we do.
And we've talked about this before, Gene. Texas Supreme Court ruled where you can't anchor juries. And what that means is if you've got a client and you're demanding $500 million, you can't use something unrelated to the actual case to convince a jury to settle for $500 million. Gene's analogy a couple of podcasts ago was there was a fighter jet valued at $750 million, and the plaintiff lawyers use that as a reason to pay their client $500 million, or a painting that's very valuable. The painting over here sold, at $450 million, so therefore our client should get $450 million. It has to be something that is directly related to the case. Mm-hmm. And Texas Supreme Court goes, we agree. And so now that's a Supreme Court ruling. Yeah, you can't anchor.
Yeah.
Unrealistic anchoring.
Well, and we've had to rely on that too, because the cases that are coming out of our local judicial hellholes, they may allow it or they may ignore the rule, and then you have to rely on the state Supreme Court to make it right. Mm-hmm. But there's added expense and time and everything else that you're having to deal with to go to that level. Like it should be kiboshed, at the first level. Like, let's just get it over with. So we've had to rely on that a lot over the last couple of years. The Texas Supreme Court has been pretty good and favorable in holding true to these statutes. It's for whatever reason, the lower courts are not doing what they're supposed to do.
Yeah, the appellate courts seem to always kind of agree with plaintiff lawyers. Mm-hmm. So you have in the Fifth Court here in Dallas has been known to really support the plaintiff lawyers' settlements and judgments. But the last election, that changed a little bit. So we're going to see if Fifth Court remains plaintiff lawyer friendly, or is there more of a balance? And then, of course, Texas Supreme Court, they're sitting right above the Court of Appeals. So that's favorable. So, we get asked all the time, when does this end? When is this insurance cost is going to settle out? And our clients are very tired. It's been, 6, 7, 8 year market with nothing but increases. Mm-hmm. And I tell them two things. First of all, don't have any accidents. And two, it has to start at the state level, not federal. State legislatures have to step in and say, we want business to be profitable in our great state of Texas. And that gets to the politicians. That's why we're serving hundreds of thousands of Texans and businesses. We want you to be profitable in a favorable business climate.
A lot of what you read off of there with the laws and what they would do if they were passed the way that they are now sounds positive. But one of the questions I have is, as a spectator, would be, like, if you had a crystal ball, what are the odds of things changing? What are the odds of getting 100% of those changes, 20% of those changes? Like, what do you think is going to happen?
So just speculation, but so Ron and I have been seeing rapidly increasing insurance rates due to these issues on the heavy commercial insurance markets for quite some time. Maybe 6, 7, 8 years ago is when we really started to take notice. And then it took several years for it to bake in, like, okay, what exactly is happening here? Is it a safety culture thing? Is it what's up? And then eventually, it gets to, okay, I don't care how good the safety culture is with this company or how good the hiring practices are or how good there is no legal backstop in Texas. And that's a strong voice in Texas, at least. Like, you've got business owners that are united, and like what Ron is saying is they marched on the Capitol 2 weeks ago. That's all great. But now what we're seeing, especially over the last 18 months, since the last Texas legislative session 2 years ago, is personal insurance is skyrocketing. Home and auto. Everybody's, grocery getters and commuter cars and dropping the kids off at school. Like, we're not talking about big trucks. We're talking about, Toyota Highlanders and F-150s and, Toyota Camrys. And people are paying twice what they paid. I'm not in the personal insurance marketplace, but I know what I'm paying now. And I know what others are. And so there has been a sentiment where this is gaining steam because now the constituency as a whole is starting to get pretty dang upset about all of this.
Yeah.
Where the insurance carriers on the personal lines level are getting hammered as well, like we are, like the large heavy stuff. So, as far as a crystal ball type question is asked, there's more steam now than there was 2 years ago, just because the people that are putting the names in the ballot box are upset. Mm-hmm. Now, how good of a job are they getting it out there that this is the reason why, other than just insurance companies are raising rates? Why are we getting to the why? I don't know. But, people are starting to probably complain with their vote, hopefully.
Gotcha.
So...
Yeah, House Bill 19 was great, but there were some flaws.
Okay.
And now the members of the Senate and the ones who voted in the House to pass House Bill 19 are going, that was not our intent for it to have flaws. And I think this session is to let's eradicate the flaws and get this bill have some teeth. Mm-hmm. And I think we have a really good chance because of the makeup of both House and Senate, plus Governor Abbott. I mean, he may be running for president in the next presidential election. And you got a very conservative attorney general and a very conservative lieutenant governor in Dan Patrick. So I think we have a lot of those in place to get some favorable laws passed. And they all want to see Texas grow. They want companies coming here. They don't want companies leaving Texas. So I think we have a really good shot, but it has to start there. And for these laws to have teeth and be used, plaintiff lobbyists are huge, strong, well-funded. But now we're seeing PAC groups for lawsuit abuse reform to be well-funded. And so there's several of those groups. I think first time in a long time, there's a lot of money pushing for these laws to be passed. And when I just came up the road here, Dallas Tollway, there was a huge billboard by a plaintiff lawyer that says he has won $1 billion over the last 5 years from insurance companies. So I'm thinking hopefully they'll be advertising where defense lawyers say, we have saved $1 billion for getting these frivolous lawsuits tossed out the window. And we have not seen those billboards, but I think you're going to see more advertising on the coalitions that are for reform.
Mm.
Well, and that's kind of flashy too, to have those billboards, and that's what catches people's eyes, and they go, oh, that's a big number, We're definitely going to call that attorney anytime we get in a fender bender, right? Yeah, it's a little bit headier to say, well, let's talk about why we need to cap non-economic damages. It's a little bit of a harder sell, right? Or a harder conversation, I guess. Oklahoma, just to the north of us, they have a cap on non-economic damages. DeSantis in Florida, like we've spoken about, they recently passed a cap, as did Iowa. And if I remember correctly, what Iowa did is they matched the cap to the filing requirements through their Department of Transportation. So like a Form E filing or, like any heavy vehicle would have to file. So they are pledging $1 million for that filing. And so what Iowa said is, well, wouldn't it make sense if we matched it? It's pretty good logic, in my opinion. If that's the state requirement for protection of the state, then, it's a good idea to maybe use that number for the non-economic damages as well. I'm pretty sure that's what they did, but I don't know what the cap is in Oklahoma, and I can't remember what it is in Florida. But to get that would be the silver bullet. That's what I hope they can have done. But
they did reform on medical malpractice in 2002, 2003.
Well, wait, no, that was Rick Perry, right? Yeah. It's been a minute.
Yeah. And it actually worked. I mean, it created more doctors coming to Texas. They go, if our exposure is $250,000 instead of $25 million, I think we'll pick Texas. And that's a great statute. It actually worked. Now you can still pursue malpractice, but you'd have to prove gross negligence, knowingly that you were creating a medical procedure that would cause harm or injury. So that's what it's going to take, Gene.
And from what I understand, though, after that bill, like the Arizona emissions insurance policies for the medical providers dropped like a rock. So if they were to do that for the excess liability and the commercial auto and like the premiums would reduce. I mean,
so if you're insuring medical malpractice for physicians and doctor groups in hospitals and your cap is $250,000 instead of $25 million, I think we want to write some insurance for these people.
Yeah.
So it creates a lot of competitive environment.
Right.
Do you see that, like there's a difference in between maintaining where a market's at and then improving where a market's at? So if these laws were in place, you mentioned before the show that a lot of owner-operators or a lot of people who own these crane industry businesses, they're wondering how they're going to stay in business if the premium or the rates keep going up. Would the rates go down or would they just cap, you think? Or is that too hard to tell?
Yeah, there's always a baking in period. So they don't change overnight. What would happen is these actuarial people for these insurance companies and these reinsurers, they've got all the data. They got all the claims data. So if they see trends where verdicts are being lowered, claim amounts settle lowered, then they're going to go, well, I think, we're for profit, but we can make a profit charging less money because we want to remain in the marketplace. We still want to write insurance, but that's what has to happen is to get results in, and I'm assuming it's not overnight. It probably take over a several year period. But when you have, and our crane clients, the cost of labor, the cost of equipment, the cost of fuel, the insurance costs, they have benefits for that went up. And then all of a sudden they want to buy a new crane from Germany. And here comes the tariffs. So that $4 million lead bearer you could have got January 1st is no longer $4 million. So, and then parts, say you manufacture a crane here in the U.S., but you import your parts from Germany or Japan or wherever it may be, those parts are going to be tariffed. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens to that market with the tariffs in place. And a lot of crane and parts are Germany, Japan, they're overseas, and they're coming back over here.
Next crane talk episode is a free trade episode.
That'd be very topical. That'd be good.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah, and we like to report. After June 1st, we'll have a really good idea of what's been passed that affects our construction clients, and how it's beneficial. and things that were probably should have been passed, but were kicked out because of some, back and forth negotiating. So, we'll have an update for you on that.
Mm-hmm. That'll be good.
That would be a good podcast episode, is once the dust settles, go through the bills,
Mm-hmm. So, that's our little spiel on the Texas legislature. They have a lot of money. Texas has got, I don't know, $300 billion in their coffers. They're very, very well funded. And therefore, they're trying to get back with, especially the property relief tax reform. They want the votes. They want to keep the votes, and therefore that rings bells. Now, the voucher system has been very controversial. Don't know much about it, but I think it's going to get passed this year. There's just too much momentum from Lieutenant Governor, the Speaker of the House now, and also the governor. Mm-hmm. And they're all real pro-voucher. So that's a big deal. We are concentrating on nuclear verdict reform.
Right. Yeah.
So, well, Gene, I know that you've been running real hot, buddy. Tell us about what's going on right now with your family and business.
It's a blur. Oh my gosh. Yeah, we're honestly, a lot of my personal projects are on hold, to be honest. It's been one thing after the next. I know I've talked about cars on here before, but I had a later model Ford pickup, a 2018 that I've had for quite some time, and been a great vehicle. But I got a really good deal on a 2003 Ford Excursion, and so I recently sold the new pickup. And now I'm driving the old. And people are like, wait a minute, you're going the wrong direction. And but I love it. It's old and it's awesome. And it's fully depreciated. So so I recently made that move. Those excursions are huge, with the baseball tournaments and all the stuff we have going on. You can fit everybody in there. So but yeah, aside from just keeping the dadgum air conditioner working in it.
Now, wait a minute. We're taking a road trip in mid-May. Are you talking about that AC not working, man?
Yeah, it's in the shop right now.
In Texas, the AC is not a luxury. It is mandatory.
It's mandatory. Yeah. You want to talk... You charge what you want. You just get that AC fixed, please, now.
Well, our neighbor in Prosper was from New Hampshire, and they came down here to thaw out.
Oh, man.
And I'd see her riding around in her car with the windows down with no AC in August. I go, how do you do that? She goes, I'm still thawing out from being up in New Hampshire.
I don't know. I think she's got a screw loose. I don't care where you're from. Mid-August in North Texas is like the 7th level of hell. High humidity, 105. I want to be anywhere but here in the middle of August.
She couldn't see either. So she picked up a cup of coffee and picked up the wrong end and it fell all over. She goes, I thought it was the opening end of the coffee cup. I said, no, ma'am, you're upside down on it. It's all over your shirt and pants. But did you get that engine dropped in there?
So not yet. I'm waiting on a few parts. But so the Excursion has, quite a few original miles, and the motor's, old. It's 22 years old. Mm-hmm. And so I got a motor built, it's a new rebuilt motor for that truck, and we're going to put it in. And, and then when my kids turn 16, they're going to have a freaking Excursion. Like, what I wouldn't have given, when I turned 16. So yeah, I'm going to put in a reliable motor and a reliable AC,
So what are you driving now?
Well, it or whatever while it's in the shop getting the AC done, a little rental car or something. But yeah.
I want to see Gene in a smart car.
Yeah. And be kind of tilted to the side.
Yeah. What was the bad guy in James Bond?
Which one?
The guy he was so tall, they opened the sunroof and he'd drive around with his head sticking out of the top.
Gosh.
Oh.
Don't remember that one. I have a lot of those old James Bond movies too.
Yeah.
I'll look it up.
Yeah, I forgot his name.
Jaws?
Jaws. Yeah.
It was the guy he had the teeth.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep,
it was Jaws. Yeah.
The most iconic, tall James Bond villain is Jaws. 7'2" actor Richard Kiel.
Richard Kiel.
Known for his metal teeth and in the appearances of The Spy Who Loved Me. There you go.
Richard Kiel. Yeah, I kept remembering going, that is so funny because we have tall people in our family also.
Well, I'm not to driving around with my head out of a sunroof yet, but on my pickup when I was choosing one to buy years ago, that F-350 that I just sold, I test drove one that had a sunroof, and I test drove one without a sunroof. And the one with the sunroof has a thicker ceiling, and so it was just enough to crowd my head. So I had to go no sunroof. I'm a no sunroof vehicle operator.
I ventured over to the electric side and drive a Tesla, and I haven't been bombed or shot at yet. But it is you're talking about the rooftop on that. It is all sunroof.
Yeah,
it's all sunroof, and I'm not a sunroof guy, but so we're being careful where we drive these days. We'll always end with a kind of a movie evaluation, and watching Landman, I went back and said, "Oh, my favorite Billy Bob Thornton film was Sling Blade."
Oh yeah.
And it was 1996, and actually Billy Bob Thornton wrote the screenplay, and he also directed it, and was nominated for Best Actor.
Okay.
And Billy Bob, now the Academy Awards said, we're going to give you Best Screenplay, because Billy Bob wrote it, and he did win for Best Screenplay. He should have won for Best Actor, but he didn't. And it was shot in Benton, Arkansas, Billy Bob's home state. That's where he was born. He shot that whole film in 26 days.
Wow.
At $1 million budget. And when it opened up theaters, did $36 million before it was distributed widely. So he made a lot of money on that. Dwight Yoakam was in that film. John Ritter was in that film. J.T. Walsh and Robert Duvall. Really good cast. And the movie Sling Blade got its name from Billy Bob Thornton played a mentally disabled character. His name was Carl Childers in the film. And he's just released from a mental hospital where he spent 20 years. And he went to work as a diesel mechanic in the small town where he had killed his wife and, his mother and her abusive boyfriend years earlier at a very young age with a sling blade.
Wow.
So that's the title. Billy Bob, that's my favorite movie of all time with Billy Bob Thornton.
Swing blade.
Yeah, Sling Blade.
Sling Blade.
Sling blade, excuse me.
Sharp on one edge and dull on the other. Yeah.
Yeah, some critics said it's a masterpiece of Southern storytelling, and you can't get it better than Billy Bob Thornton.
Yeah, it's true.
So check it out. I think you can probably stream it on any of the streamers, and you'll be fascinated. I think Billy Bob is 69 years old, and that was, 30 years ago. So he was late 30s when he did it. And Dwight Yoakam, I knew him from country music singing. He's a really good actor.
Yeah.
So
I think he's been a villain in
he
a
has.
few films. I can't remember him offhand, but he's there's more to him than guitars and Cadillacs.
So liked it then, love it even more now.
Good deal.
Yeah.
Good deal. Well, thank you for listening, and be sure that you subscribe and leave the show a 5-star review. If you have any questions, you could reach out to us using the links in the show notes down below. New episodes go out each month, and until then, we will see you next time.